Daily Ticker Time brought to you as always by our good friends at Pelican Brewing. They bring you today's Daily Ticker. 4 locations along the Oregon coast. Fly over to a Pelican location. Enjoy epic views and local brews all year long. Pelican Brewing looks forward to seeing you at the coast.
Hey, that's the right music.
We got the right music. Corn Pop got the job done. I want to talk Oregon UCLA. They play tonight. College hoops, Ducks back in action. We got to start though with the little cuties. I want a scouting report. How did the game go? What time did you get home? As our good buddy Tyson Alger joining us now, the I-5 corridor. You can give him a follow on Twitter at Tyson Alger. How'd the game go? How'd you play last night, Tyson?
The game went okay. We lost 2-1. It was the second game of the season, playing the defending champs. It was a good game, which made it a frustrating game. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, guys. Like, you're sitting there on the bench and you're focused in the third period, but all that's popping up in my head is, what am I going to say about Jackson Shellstad tomorrow on 1080 The Fan at 8:30 in the morning? So, it's just hard to have your mind in two different places.
A fun fact about your rec league men's hockey team that you guys take very seriously. I still have, from about 5 years ago.
You get your little cutie sweatshirt still?
I still have a little cuties t-shirt, and I still like wearing it. One, because the material. Two, it fits me like a glove.
Yeah.
But I still get people that come up all the time and, excuse me, are those little oranges on your shirt? And I said, they're little cuties, actually. And then they ask me, and I say, well, it's a legendary hockey team. And then that's all I tell them, and I walk away.
That's it. You guys sell that merch online anywhere? Can people go buy the little cuties merch?
Actually, we do, and we just had a new merch drop. So maybe we have to get you. Maybe we have to get you guys outfitted in some new gear.
I think we need some new gear, man. Well, you can blame us for the loss last night. That's fine. I call it bad coaching, but that's okay. We'll take the blame for the 2-1 loss in Game 2. What do we make of Oregon, Tyson? They're at UCLA tonight, so it's a Pac-12/Big Ten matchup, which is still very weird. The loss in Minnesota over the weekend, they've played a lot of close games that they seemingly pull out at the end, but sometimes late in that Minnesota game, especially some of the late possessions weren't great. What have you made just kind of watching Oregon and the way they've developed this year?
Yeah, it's been a weird team because for the first time in what feels like years, that they actually put together a strong enough non-conference schedule where we're not necessarily like sweating all of these losses like we might have been the last couple seasons, where it's like, oh gosh, they're going to have to win the whole conference tournament to get into the league or to get into the NCAA tournament. But yeah, like this is a really weird Oregon team. Like they're pretty darn good at playing up with their backs up against the wall. They've had, I think, like 5 or 6 games where they've come back from behind after halftime and come back to win. And outside of that Minnesota game, they've actually been fairly good on the road. But it's just, they're not deep enough scoring wise to have a guy or two go cold. They're decent defensively, but this is one of the worst rebounding teams that Dana Altman's had in quite some time. And I think that's kind of just where they fall behind. It's if the shooters aren't hot, they just don't generate the second or third chance opportunity points that they might have in past years. So it's one of those things where you still look at their overall record, and I think, what are they at, like 4 or 5 losses right now? In past years, they've probably been at the 7 or 8 marker at this point.
Yeah,
they have a lot. They have a lot of quality wins. I know it's this newfangled NCAA talk, but I believe it's quadrant 1 wins is what we're talking about now, and the Ducks have actually racked those up. So it's a weird situation because they started really great, and I feel like they've been going through this lull. And outside of this UCLA game, like, things are about to start getting really tough. Turns out the Big Ten Conference likes playing basketball, and you still have the likes of Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin coming up here in February. So it's one of those things where, like, yes, right now on January 30th, they're sitting okay, but this next like 3 or 4 week stretch is really going to kind of determine not only seeding for the Big Ten Conference, but just how comfortable the Ducks are going into that thing.
I think a good poll question would be, do you have to be at least 78 to use the term newfangled? I think that was a great poll by you. Your piece on January 20th, I thought it was really good in highlighting the Purdue game, which I watched most of the first half live, and then I had to watch on the DVR the second half, but I left the first half going, Purdue missed all their shots. They're barely trailing. This is not going to end well. And I came home and found out it did not end well. Altman said after the game they're poorly coached, to which I like that you were like, nah, we know you're a good coach. Like, it's not a coach thing. And that the arena felt like an airport at times, which we've talked about on this show. But I am curious. They're taking on a UCLA team whose own coach said they're soft, called them out. They're not having a great year by their standards. What you make of the matchup, and who is the second guy on the Ducks? In the years past of good Oregon teams, I feel like we could pinpoint 2 to 3 guys that we consistently felt like we tab. Who is the second? If Shellstad's not having a good game, who is the guy to carry the torch for them in those moments?
Yeah, it's evolved into Nate Biddle, but also Nate Biddle's not your traditional, like, depend on this guy to go out and fill up the stat sheet, sort of from an offensive standpoint. I mean, he is averaging, I think, 12.9 points per game, and he's been really, really necessary, especially with the departure of N'Faly Dante. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem for the Ducks, is they just don't have that consistent third guy. I mean, like, you could swap around like TJ Bamba, Brandon Angel, and Keyshawn Bartholomew, but it's almost like you're flipping a coin as to which one of those guys are going to be consistent and sort of output that Dana Altman can rely on. And so, it's just, again, this is an Oregon team where if things line up, I think they can be really good, but it's not a team that has a whole lot of wiggle room to it. And so it's interesting, kind of the contrast of, Cronin and Altman talking about like their struggles this year, where Altman's all ready to just blame it on himself and say they're a poorly coached team. Whereas I think it was a couple weeks ago when Cronin was just basically touting his accomplishments at, I've won this, these kids don't follow. So it's just contrasting. It's just contrasting styles, which I think is fascinating too, that they've kind of flipped a little bit. UCLA isn't playing great ball. Oregon is playing when UCLA made the Final Four a few years ago. And back then, I remember UCLA was playing in the Portland regional of the NCAA tournament. I remember watching Cronin and just thinking, like, boy, this guy really runs a tight ship. Like, this team has direction. This team knows what it's doing. And it's pretty drastic to see that kind of fall apart a little bit over the last few years. Maybe it's a coach that his voice just isn't falling correctly in their locker room, but it's just UCLA is a weird team. They're not nearly as disciplined as you would think they are. And, I think this is one of those games where Oregon's going to try to keep them below 70. That's Dana Altman's magic number. He thinks that if they can keep teams below 70, they have a chance, except for if it's Purdue, because Purdue was really good at winning a fight in a phone booth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's a weird season. I still watch a lot of these conference games, and I'm saying that in air quotes because it still doesn't feel normal. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched that Minnesota game, but it's really hard to kind of get into the college basketball season's already hard enough to find the rhythm of, especially when you have a good football team that extends into January and you're just trying to get your feet set, and it just has even more of a weird feeling to this season, I think, than the football run through the Big Ten.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I had that Minnesota Maryland game, or Wisconsin Maryland, whatever it was last night. I'm like, I should care about this, but it doesn't matter to me, and I don't know how long that'll take to feel normal. But maybe eventually we'll get there. There's nobody better locally covering the sports scene: Timbers, Ducks, Beavers, everybody involved. I5corridor.com. At Tyson Alger on Twitter. Go give him a follow. Kind enough to wake up this morning after a late night on the ice last night.
Be better.
Let's get a better effort from the little cuties next time, okay? And hopefully next time we try and book you, it won't be after an 11 o'clock hockey game. Thanks for getting up with us, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Take care.
There you go. Tyson Alger, the I-5 Corridor.